Bereishis bara Elokim, the most powerful statement of Hashem. These opening words of His Torah should impact on our generation more than any other generation throughout the history of mankind. Rashi does not recognize the Torah as a history book teaching historical fact. It is a code of law. Why did the Torah begin with Bereishis bara Elokim? Hashem knew the Gentile world would always discredit our claim to the Holy Land and the Temple Mount. Therefore, the Torah begins with Hashem's declaration that I created the world, and therefore it is my choice which nation would inhabit my Holy Land. Was there a time in history when we needed this reassurance more than now? The United Nations does not recognize any Jewish claim on RABBIS. Since we won the war in 1948, the Arabs and the rest of the world has attempted to discredit our claims to the Holy Land. We see the Arab onslaught on Jewish youth on college campuses to wear away any resolve to identify with Israel and ultimately their Jewishness. Without a strong faith in Hashem, it is impossible to survive such a world conspiracy. The Ramban, although agreeing with Rashi that the Torah is not a history book, he holds the Torah cannot leave out the most fundamental tenet of our faith because our whole adherence to the Torah depends on it. Why should this impact on our generation more so than previous generations? We can preface this with a fundamental question asked by the Kuzari. When Hashem introduced Himself to the Jewish people at Har Sinai, He said, I am the God that took you out of Egypt, not the God that created the universe out of nothing. Hashem wanted us to accept Him as our God, to love and fear Him. Certainly, the more effective introduction would have been the latter. God performed miracles for us in Egypt, but those cannot compare to creating a world, a universe out of nothing. The Kuzari answers by way of the words of the Yeshaya Hanavi, Atem Eidai. We are Hashem's witnesses. It is our function as Jews to testify to the truth of Hashem's existence and His greatness. We cannot testify only about what we saw. If we would make claims that Hashem created the world, even though it is true, we would be forced to claim something that is an assumption and not a fact that we can prove. We were not present at creation, but we were present in Mitzrayim. Nobody could question what we witnessed there. We witnessed Hashem's abrogation of the laws of nature. This is a tradition that we transmit from one generation to the next. This is highlighted by our celebration of Pesach and particularly the Leil HaSeder. The Rambam emphasizes that the obligation of that night is for each Jew to actually experience as much as possible that he was in fact in Egypt and witnessed these miracles. This is the foundation of our emunah. However, this attitude was not to negate in any way or question Hashem as the creator and the designer of the universe. Jews and Gentiles who observed, studied, and pondered creation throughout the generations only strengthened their religious conviction to an almighty, all-knowing being. It is only during the last 150 years of history that mankind has attempted to put forward an atheistic doctrine corroborated by modern science. It has corrupted the moral conscience and instincts of mankind, culminating in the genocide perpetrated by the Nazis on our people. It continues today by nations who slaughter their weak, and the world remains silent. Those of us that understand a little of Hashem's ultimate plan understand that as the end of days approach, The forces of evil exhaled their last breath, the denial of Hashem's existence. Chazal tell us the reason Hashem waged an eternal war against Amalek is because metaphorically they threw themselves into a boiling pot to cool it down. The Jews had just undermined the greatest and most advanced country in the Near East, Egypt, a slave nation, subjugated for 210 years with no hope of ever escaping their servitude, walked out of Egypt in broad daylight with the insistence of their persecutors. They did not wage war. Hashem destroyed Egypt by way of the 10 plagues. There was no doubting Hashem's omnipotence. Shortly after, Amalek wages war against the Jews. Although Yoshua was victorious, just waging war at that time against the Jews succeeded in diminishing somewhat the new world view. It is possible even that this influenced many Gentiles not to flock to Har Sinai to join Klal Yisrael to receive the Torah. We are now confronted with the New Age Amalek. These are many members of the scientific community who preach an atheistic doctrine and attempt to corroborate this doctrine with scientific proof. Unfortunately, most of us today are not fortified sufficiently with the knowledge to fight against this type of onslaught, and many of our Jewish brothers and sisters fall prey to these ideas without realizing how pernicious these doctrines really are. Anyway, it makes life easier. A world without a God is a world without a higher conscience. It allows man to dictate laws of conscience and morality. However, the voice of truth cannot be quieted forever. Those who approach science with an open eye recognize without a shadow of a doubt that it only reinforces our belief in Hashem, whose wisdom is endless, as vast and deep as the great oceans. Certainly, traditional Jews who dedicate their lives to the service of Hashem through daily learning of Torah and performance of mitzvahs clearly testify to the existence of Hashem. As the Mashiach approaches closer and closer, their voice of faith will prevail, and the world will recognize the one true God. Therefore, the first words of the Torah that expresses this fundamental principle has to reverberate in our minds and hearts more so than ever. There is a God, Hashem, who created the universe out of nothing.